This is central Russia, the Tver region, the heart of Russia as some may call it, located about halfway between the two Russian capitals, Moscow and St. Petersburg. But in this land dominated by Eastern Slavs, there are islands of Finno-Ugric descended people whose ancestors once fled to the stronghold of Eastern Orthodoxy from the persecution induced on them by the Swedes, who had just conquered their homeland. They did not expect to return, and they never did. This is a video about the Tver Karelians. Let's go back in time for a bit and travel to medieval Ingria, or Zhorskaya Zemlya, as it was called back then, a land almost entirely made up of Finno-Ugric peoples adhering to the Orthodox Christian faith. The largest one of them all, the Karelians, had come to this land a long time ago from the area just north of there, the Karelian Isthmus, the homeland of all existing Karelians. They lived peacefully, praying to Christ, yet continuing to see old pagan traditions and paying tribute to the Novgorodians, to whom their land belonged. The Novgorodians did not bother them all too much, as long as they were, at least nominally, Christians, and paid what they had to. Other than that, they were free to do whatever they wanted. But all changed for them when the Treaty of Stolbovo was signed and this land had been given out to the Kingdom of Sweden. The Swedes were, to say the very least, not as tolerant to their customs and beliefs as the Novgorodians and later the Muscovites were. While the latter mostly left them alone as long as they said they were Orthodox, the former really took their religion to heart. They would not leave them alone until they had become devout Lutherans and completely forgotten their ancient beliefs. After all, this is exactly what happened to the Finns. The Swedes were so thorough in their efforts that soon enough they started resettling Lutherans from Finland to help assimilate the Karelians. They could not keep up with it anymore, so they just packed up and left. And where did they go? To Russia, of course. They went through the entire Novgorodian land, choosing not to stay there as it was way too close to the border, and they were afraid of the Swedes taking that land as well. So they went even further, and soon enough they were already in the Tver lands. Much of the land there was empty and abandoned due to the Tartar raids from just a few years back, so the Karelians just took up those lands as their own. Soon enough, there were thousands of ethnically Karelian villages thriving in Tver, so many in fact that you could say that it was a sort of Karelia outside Karelia, a Tver Karelia. Years passed, Emperor Peter the Great took back Ingria and founded the new capital of Russia there, but the Karelians did not return. After all, why would they? The climate in Tver was much milder and much more suitable for the agriculture they had been living off of, and by that time most people who had any memories of Ingria left were gone. As far as people knew, this was their home, the only one they've ever had, and they were more than okay with that. And just like that, generations passed, and these Karelians continued living happily in their villages. Then the revolution came. The early Bolsheviks, to many people's surprise, were actually very supportive of ethnic identity, implementing a lot of self-identification policies during the 20s and early 30s. The Tver Karelians were organized into the Karelian National Okrug, part of the Tver region and with its capital in the town of Lihoslavl. The Tver Karelian language and identity thrived during this time, and it was then that Tver Karelian population had reached its peak. But all good things must end. The Okrug was abolished in 1939, and soon enough World War II had started. Thousands of Karelians, mostly men, along with other Soviets, had perished on the battlefield. And after the war, things weren't all that easy for them either. In the 1950s, the Soviet Union experienced a mass migration from rural to urban regions. This affected the Tver Karelians as many of the population were farmers or resident in rural areas. Because of such predominantly rural residents, the term Karelian might, in some circumstances in Russia, colloquially equate to a hillbilly or a redneck. And then the USSR fell. current situation. Since 1997, the Tver Karelians had restored their national and cultural autonomy in the Tver region. Numerous museums and festivals targeted at reviving interest in Karelian culture were organized, such as the annual Kalitka festival. It's nothing short of amazing that these people managed to survive and thrive in a land that was not originally their own. I think that we all can learn something from the great history of Tver Karelians.